Everybody, welcome back to Wiki Sports. This is At the Buzzer, and we're joined as always by Jack Tiernan, and for the first time, our new contributor, Ryan Flynn. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing good, guys. How's it going? How's playoffs treating you? Good?
I mean, great so far,
Yeah.
personally. Jack, how you doing?
We're good. I think you're right. I think playoffs are treating us all well. I don't think any of us can complain as Celtics fans, for sure.
No, even
Uh,
just Celtics or basketball fans. Just an amazing
Sure.
playoffs so far.
no, yeah. I guess I asked because, like I said, I just got into for the first time the wonderful world of easy, accessible sports betting.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually bet against the Celtics last night, which I've never done before, and it was messed up.
Yeah.
It was the toughest watch I've ever sat through. I was like they were losing and I felt horrible. Then they were winning and I was like, I feel like I don't deserve this. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm gonna do it again.
Yeah. I have a decent sized bet on the Celtics to win the title when their odds were like pretty low, so we'll see. Right now I'm sipping the Kool-Aid, so to speak. I believe
Same.
fully. But
Yeah,
yeah.
no. I mean,
Look,
yeah,
I respect the bet, frankly, though. Like, you have to assume that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are going to come out guns blazing, right? So
Mhm.
I don't blame you.
No, I don't
no,
blame
it
Ryan
was.
at all.
It made sense because everyone was expecting the Nets to really hit hard the first game, and I mean KD just hasn't looked like himself. But I think
No.
we've kind of discussed, and we could even discuss more. I think we should address a lot of that has just been the defense Boston's been playing on him, and it's also kind of questionable the way they're covering KD right now. You don't see that kind of coverage in the regular
No.
season. I also don't. We're not seeing it quite in any other playoff game right now to that degree. I've never seen anyone do that to KD.
No, certainly not. Well, I guess let's start there. Jack, would you agree with Ryan's assessment? Are the Celtics pulling out, I guess, all the stops to shut down KD? And obviously it worked yesterday, going 0 for 10 in the second half on field goals.
Yeah, which is wild. I completely agree, Ryan. I think you're spot on. You have to give Ime credit, too, because he ironically comes from the Nets coaching staff and knows KD probably better than half the people in the Celtics organization otherwise. So you know that he is really going to throw all the stops. They're playing him really physically, you know?
Mhm.
Like, they're really just throwing everybody at him, kind of like you said, and just, like, beating him up. Like, you see Grant Williams kind of sprinting around like crazy, bumping him over, like he's taking a beating, and you have to wonder if that's affecting him just like in the head a little bit because it's just not himself. I said it in the last podcast. He looks like a weird, confused giraffe. Like it's not good.
No, the word I would almost use is what is shook. That's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's like shook, like just like spook. It's like
Mhm.
it's almost like it's weird because it's like you find yourself. Of course, you're like always hate KD and Kyrie as a Celtics fan, and then you see him shook, and then you see all of a sudden for the first time you see Kyrie kind of like unsure, and you're
Mhm.
Yeah.
like, "What happened, to you guys?" Like
Yeah. So you got Steve Nash just being like, "What do I do? What like this is terrible." I think that kind of goes to show, like you were saying, coaching is huge here. And yes, Steve Nash, amazing player, Hall of Fame player, like one of the greatest point guards of all time. But Ime, he came up in a more traditional sense, under Popovich, like probably the best modern coach, has like the most wins. He kind of learned what it took to be a coach rather than going very quickly from player to coach. So I guess Jack, what do you think of that? Like the two differencing paths and how it's kind of affected the series.
Yeah, it's a little bit ironic here because obviously I think we can all agree that Udoka is the better coach overall.
Yes.
At least from this series, I can say that. I don't want to say
Mhm.
overall because obviously this is a small sample size.
Yeah.
But I think Ime's really been good at adjusting to the adjustments, while Steve Nash is not. Well, he makes the initial game plan and he's fine and it comes out well, like we saw in the first half. And then Ime adjusts, and then Nash can't quite figure it out, or he's like stalling out a little bit. I think the irony actually lies in that as a player, Ime really didn't play much at all. Was more of like a defender, would kind of come out and like bump and grind. He didn't play very long, he didn't play very much. While Steve Nash obviously was like the Hall of Fame career, like you mentioned, and it's just funny now how the roles have kind of reversed a little bit. So it's fun to watch from that perspective, and obviously because the Celtics are winning, so like why would it not be a contend?
Yeah, and Ryan, I mean, same kind of question to you. Like, do you think, as it's kind of like a cliche almost, like the player who has to work hard kind of understands the game at a different level, whereas like a player who is naturally great might not understand how to motivate the players who are not naturally as gifted. So he can like maybe be on the same wavelength as KD and Kyrie, but he maybe doesn't know how to adjust for some of the players who aren't as naturally gifted as he was as a player.
Oh, of course. I mean, I think like a perfect example is this show that's very popular right now, Winning Time. Jerry West, right, became a coach. He said that the former coach had told him, you are going to be a terrible coach because you're going to expect everyone to be as good as you and to work as hard as you, and they're not going to be able to do that, and it's going to frustrate you. Right, and so he ended up being a terrible coach. Great player, terrible coach. Pat Riley, not a very good NBA player, great coach. It is probably for Steve Nash. You got to think of the guys he's played with, right? He's put Dirk, really good Suns team. LA wasn't super successful, but definitely there's a lot of talent. So I think he kind of maybe he expects everyone to almost have the court vision he would have, and he's like, because he's very focused on KD and Kyrie. That seems to be his thing, is get them the ball. You see him in interviews, he very much tends to focus on, like Kyrie, KD, they took those shots, they should have made them, that kind of a thing.
Right.
Basically like, those are the shots, we'll get it next game. And I honestly think a big thing with the Nets is a lot of their, they're really not using a lot of their role players as much as they could be. And not that not that what they have is great, but I mean, Seth Curry could be shooting more. I mean, Bruce Brown was doing a lot last night. I'm trying to think. Yeah, they definitely Ben Simmons will be huge, just for size and defense.
They're such a small team. That's a great point too. They're such a small team comparatively, especially to the Celtics when they get Time Lord back too. You're spot on. I think I just don't. It'll be interesting to see how you may adjust to the adjustment that is Ben Simmons on defense.
And you know what I will actually, it's huge on the perimeter, especially with Jalen and Tatum. There's just no one that can cover them defensively on the perimeter. No. But what I was actually going to say with the Nets is I think that actually how bad KD's playing, a little their other players are, it's pretty amazing the games are this close.
Yes.
And that is the one concern I currently have, is that the games are so close. What if they do start calling, more of the pushes on KD? What if they do start getting it out to Steph more? Our defense is ironclad, and I think we can do it, but it's still, we do have to admit, KD, like you just said, KD is putting up 0 points in the fourth quarter, and we barely skate by with a win against the Brooklyn Nets. Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing, is our offense, if you actually look at the numbers, I think even like Jalen, he's always gonna, he's looked a lot better, but he's always gonna take a couple shots where you're like, I wouldn't have should he have taken that?
That pull-up three in the third, that wasn't great.
No, but the numbers look okay offensively right now. They end up looking okay, even though some of it looks ugly. But it's against the Brooklyn Nets. They're 20th. They had the 20th ranked defense this year.
Yeah.
They also ranked dead last in defensive rebounding. That's a stat. That's horrible.
It's got to be a size thing too, right? You have to make some of that assumption, Yeah. Their biggest guy is Andre Drummond, right? And he, granted, he is a big guy, and right now he's the biggest guy on the court for sure. But he hasn't done as well of a job as he could have in defensive rebounding for sure. And I mean, at the same time, you can't expect him to do it all. it goes both ways. Like you got to have some other guys. KD really is just like he's out there to play offense. He's not out and maybe contest a shot here and there just because his wingspan is like enormous. I want to counter just a little bit that I think the Celtics should be winning these games by a lot more because of the amount of turnovers that we've seen in the first half of these games right now. It's been pretty bad. Like I know, yeah, you can expect a turnover here and there, but you see just like Jalen dribble off his foot. You see Jason like make an errant pass. Marcus make an errant pass. It looks really disoriented in the first half. I guess I would say, just like I don't know if they're just trying to rush. They're just trying to like score as many as they can before they know Brooklyn inevitably goes on a run because that's totally fair. But you're right. I think it'll be interesting to see what adjustments are made because I think even though we said KD's never going to put up a performance like that after game one, you have to assume that, okay, 2 games in a row, I don't think KD's doing this for a third game unless Ime has locked him up and figured him out like crazy. So he still is Kevin Durant. So I feel like he still is going to find ways to score, but I don't know.
Yeah, so right now it's a 5-game series. Celtics only need to win 2 of them to advance. Ryan, what do you think the biggest thing the Celtics need to do to ensure that they win 2 of the next 4 to the next 5? I guess it would only be 4 if they win 2. But what are your thoughts there?
I think they need to, continue what they're doing defensively. I think what they're doing with KD is ultimately good. I think they might want to ease up a little bit because I could see later in the series there were definitely a couple calls that could have been made in the fourth quarter for sure. And then offensively, again, and this is kind of, Jack, we've talked about this all season. It's much better, and I hate to call out Jalen because he's done such a phenomenal job. But just an example, would just like to see him, sometimes make the smart pass instead of the quick shot, like you said, not making the turnover. These guys are really young. We have to remember that, him and Jason Tatum, and they're doing incredible for how young they are. And their season playoff, that's basically at a young age. And they're playing against KD and Kyrie, these two could be the next KD and Kyrie. I saw an interview with Jaylen Brown. Just apparently he said he didn't sleep really at all the past week. And it really when you hear that kind of stuff, it makes you realize, these guys aren't superhuman.
Yeah. No,
so,
totally.
Also, to be fair, we do have to give them credit for what they're doing, and it's okay to make mistakes. I like where we're at now because I feel like they can move past them. It's like we're talking about these ugly moves they're making, but what everyone really is seeing, who's tuning in for the Celtics the first time, is Marcus Smart making that 3 yesterday and celebrating.
Yep.
They're seeing Jason Tatum's buzzer beater. They're seeing KD just get absolutely shut down. So I think we just hone in on that stuff, and kind of honestly, I'm very curious to see what Steve Nash's adjustments are because I just think there's a lot more than net. Not that the Nets have very much, but they're not really using much of all what they got, and they're hanging in there. So I'm curious to see Game 4. I think the Celtics can take it I think the Celtics are going to take it in 6.
Yeah, I think that was Jack's original when we did a preview. Still feel confident on that, Jack?
I don't want to get overzealous, so I'm going to stick with Celtics in 6 as well. I think could it be done in 5? Probably. I think Ryan alluded to it earlier. I don't think it's likely that with the way KD and Kyrie are shooting and how close these games have been, I don't think it's likely that we sweep them. No shot. If we do, I will be shocked in a happy way, but I'll be shocked. I think you have to expect them to turn it on and Steve Nash to figure out how to coach, at least for one game. And then I think, I'm going to say Celtics in 6 still.
Yeah, I would never say that the refs would do anything to influence. But as Ryan said, there are certain calls that could be made to potentially extend the series if Vegas wanted that, if the NBA wanted that. So we'll see what happens there. Of course, would never say that that's something that would happen. But so anything else before we get on out of here, guys?
I just want to highlight, because I did emphasize that, I don't think that, I'm not saying it's an issue on what we're doing. It's, you're just noticing, and it happens in the NBA, the regular season versus the playoffs, and then certain series like this, you can see some difference in the consistencies of the calls, which makes it very confusing. And both as like a scorer like KD, and both for the defender. Like, it's not really fair for Al Horford either if they're not calling that, and then they're going to start calling it all of a sudden.
Right. No.
I do like watching like physical basketball. Like it is kind of nice to see a little more of that. It is like it does kind of feel more like an old school Boston team.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, like it is cool. Yeah.
All right, Jack. Any last thoughts?
No, man. I'm looking forward to Game 3 on Saturday. I would love to see the Celtics take one in Brooklyn. So fingers crossed for that.
No, definitely. All right. So with that, Jack, where can they find you online?
Best place to find me is on Twitter, and that's at Jack_Tiernans. Tiernan, sorry, did I just pluralize my last name? At Jack_Tiernan. Also, you can follow my Instagram page at Jack Disc Golf, so I'll have all my disc golf content on there. And of course, on Twitter, you'll be seeing that NBA content, especially throughout the playoffs.
Yes. And Ryan, I know you're healthier than Jack and I. You don't have Twitter, but do you have anything you want to plug?
Smart man.
Yeah.
I've been writing a few articles on the Wicked Good sports blog. I wrote one about the Celtics, actually, and why Celtics fans shouldn't be worried, even though I just expressed why I could potentially be worried. But
Yep.
Really, you shouldn't be worried. You should read out more and feel better about it.
Yeah. Definitely. So go check Ryan out there. Again, that's wickedeverythingsports.com for blogs. You can also catch me blogging about the Spring League, the USFL over there. Interesting stuff happening. And then obviously I'll do NFL stuff as the season approaches. And then we have Chris covering hockey there, much like he does on the channel, and Rhett covering baseball, just like he does on the channel. You can follow me on Twitter at @theFakeBMar. That's BMARR. Channel is on Twitter at WickedGoodSport or WG Everything. Instagram at Wicked Everything. Twitch at twitch.tv/WickedGoodEverything. And on TikTok, search Wicked Sports. Search Wicked Everything. Ryan and Jack, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
And we'll see you all in the next one.